Do you have any sense, Chancellor, of what the economic impact of this second lockdown that we're in at the moment is going to be?
Obviously, restrictions of this nature do have a significant impact on the economy. We've already seen that when we've done this over the spring. They have a particularly acute impact on those sectors like hospitality, which is impacted by the ability for people to socialise. But I think it's very hard to precisely model the impact of time-limited interventions or particular things like a curfew. But we know the economic damage is significant. We know that 750,000 people have already lost their jobs since the start of this crisis. And that's why we've put in place a series of measures to try and mitigate as much of that damage as possible. We're extending the furlough scheme, we're creating job placements for young people through the Kickstart scheme, providing support to those who are most vulnerable, and it's important that we carry on doing that.
It's funny, I remember, I think in May, I asked you whether, if there was a second wave, whether you would restart the furlough scheme, and you said no, it's ending in October. So what changed between now and then?
Well, the necessary restrictions that we've had to put in place, which is obviously something we've had to do with heavy heart on a national basis, given the spread of the virus and what we were being told by our medical and scientific advisors about the NHS being overwhelmed. It was necessary to act in the way that we did. Now, obviously, those restrictions are significant. They are a shutdown of large swathes of the economy. And because of that, we thought it was right to extend the furlough scheme, which has started in March and run continuously since then and will run continuously through to next March. But it will provide support to people, their jobs and their incomes through a difficult winter.
But it wasn't really unpredictable, was it? I mean, many people thought there was going to be a second wave, and I asked you specifically about that, and you said no, that's going to be the furlough scheme. So, how do you explain what some people are calling a U-turn?
Well, I think on the suppressor of the virus always has to be our primary focus. And we had a strategy of localised intervention, which I think was the right approach. I firmly believe that's the right thing to do, to use localised intervention. And that was an approach that was supported by our scientific and medical advisors. And we were all watching the spread of the disease. And unfortunately, in areas where there was very low incidence, we saw very rapid rise, the possibility of hospitals being overwhelmed in a matter of weeks. So we had to act in a different way. Now, that is unfortunate, but it's necessary. But there has been no interruption in coverage. The furlough scheme has been running continuously throughout this period and will continuously do so.
Are you frustrated that you had all of those kind of plans to intervene, whether it was indeed that or whether it was the test and trace system, that they didn't actually do the job?
Well, we're dealing with something the likes of which we haven't seen before, and we're throwing absolutely everything at it. And when you talk about test and trace, it's important to remember right at the beginning of this crisis, I think we were testing about 10,000 people a day, and in the space of 6-7 months, we've now been able to increase that to 500,000 tests per day of capacity. That makes us one of the leading countries in the world. So it's an extraordinary achievement, and I pay enormous tribute to all the people who have worked hard to bring that about. But ultimately, we're dealing with a virus, and it has a seasonal life, and coming into autumn and winter, that obviously exacerbates the spread of the virus, which is why we had to move from a localised approach to a national approach.
Last time around, and obviously these GDP numbers reflect August, when Eat Out to Help Out was a big part of what was going on in the economy. Would you consider reinstating or reintroducing Eat Out to Help Out after this lockdown?
Well, I want to talk about specific measures, but more broadly, I think it's right that when we finally exit this, and hopefully next year with testing and maybe indeed vaccines as well, we'll be able to look forward to getting back to normal. I think we'll have to look at the economic situation and see what's the best form of our support. And we want to make sure that we get the economy going strongly coming out of this. We want to make sure that we support employment, support people going in to jobs. We want all the people who have sadly lost their jobs, we want to help them find new ones. We want to get consumers spending again, people out and about. So we'll look at a range of things to see what the right interventions are at that time.
And this might be the last time we speak, actually, before Brexit, before the end of the year, when we potentially come out of the Brexit transition period. Are you comfortable that we are ready for whatever happens, and how important is getting a deal?
Well, the Prime Minister said at the weekend that talks were intensifying, and I think that's a good thing. Both sides need to be constructive. That's happening. There is a deal to be done, but it requires that goodwill and cooperation, and I know people are working very hard at it. But in all cases, our trading relationships are going to change. And that's why we've spent a lot of the last year working with industry, investing in new technology at the borders, trying to get businesses to prepare, help them do that through custom support as well. And I'm confident all those interventions will make a difference.
So, very last question, I completely forgot. The Office for Tax Simplification has talked about capital gains tax potentially raising it. I know you don't want to give your budget right now, but just your reaction to that report.
Well, the Office for Tax Simplification is independent from me, and I think as a matter of statute, actually, they review most major taxes on an annual basis, and they've looked at income tax and inheritance tax in the past, and this is just the latest in their line of reviews, and I look forward to reading the report.